Hey Sterile Processing Professionals, Brandon the Sterile Guy here. In today's video, we're going to talk about how to use my materials to easily pass the CRCST exam or any of the other sterile processing certification exams for that matter. If you would be so kind as to give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, it definitely helps the algorithm, make sure that it gets out and helps more techs be able to get certified. But before I get into that, have you heard? Heard what? The Sterile Guy just released his surgical instrument flashcards. He did? Yeah, and you can order off his website. Sweet, I'm gonna place an order. Yeah, these flashcards are designed to work with the CRCST, the CIS, the CSIS, and even the surgical technologist certification. An order placed. No way. Hi. Oh, thank you. This isn't even in post office packaging, and you don't even look like a mailman. To get your surgical instrument flashcards, or even a bundle of items at a bigger discount, go to www.thesterileguy.com and order yours today. Okay, back to business. So there are two basic study strategies that I offer with my materials. You're either gonna have practice exams, which have multiple choice questions, or you're gonna have flashcards, which have either questions and answers or items with definitions. Both of these strategies are great, but used together, they are incredible. And that is why I've created bundles to put those together. There's the CRCST Ultimate Bundle where you can get the practice exams and the CRCST flashcards. And I just released the CRCST Supreme Bundle, which includes the practice exams, the CRCST flashcards, and the surgical instrument flashcards all in one. But let me break down each strategy so that you can best use your time to study. Let's first talk about the easier strategy, which is the practice exams, the multiple choice questions. This option helps you to prepare for the exam by providing you a format that is gonna be just like the exam you're gonna take when you actually go to that testing center and take your sterile processing exam. You're gonna get questions and or even scenarios sometimes, and you're gonna get a list of 4 or 5 multiple choice questions to choose from. This strategy helps you to get in that frame of mind of taking a test, so hopefully it helps you get in a rhythm so that you can decrease that test anxiety, but it also helps to prepare you for kind of deducting down the answers to what makes sense. There's always going to be probably 2 answers that are just obviously not right. And then there's going to be 2 where one seems the most right and one is close. And it could be tricky depending on how you read that question in your head. One thing about the practice exams and the real certification tests for that matter is you don't get extra credit or get to save face if you choose not to answer a question you don't know. There is no penalty for getting a question wrong. If you choose not to answer it, it's the same thing. You get it wrong. But if you at least take a guess, there's a 25% chance you'll get it right. Or if it's true or false, that's a 50% chance you'll get it right. So answer every question the best you can. Now, once you've completed those practice tests, you've done your first run through of those, they should become the basis for how you move forward with your studying. You should be taking those practice exams, figuring out which questions you got wrong, and then with the answer key, it tells you what chapters and page numbers those are from. So you can take those chapters with the page numbers and figure out which areas you feel like you're struggling with the most. So let's say you get quite a bit of decontamination questions wrong. That's a chapter to go back and read and study. But don't forget about those questions you took a guess on. So even if you got that right, you still didn't know it. So I would include that in your wrong answers. That way you can actually go and study that thoroughly to make sure you understand it, because your next guess on the real test might not be so lucky. Now, once you've gone and you've reread those chapters and you've done some more studying, it's good to, after a week or 2 weeks, come back and retake those tests and see how you do. I don't recommend taking them back to back because you're not really learning, you're just trying to memorize. You want to learn the material because these questions on my tests are not the exact same questions you'll get on the test. You need to understand the subject, because how I ask you it in my practice exam might be asked slightly different on the certification exam. And if you're trying to just go off of exact memory, you might miss it. You need to understand the subject and the concept of what they're asking you. The more and more you go back to, you practice, you take the test, you go back and you study, you come back and take the test. Each time you do that, you're gonna notice your score should be increasing. Okay, now let's talk about the flashcards, which is a much less forgiving source. And what I mean by this is, unlike having multiple choice questions that kind of guide you towards an answer, flashcards give you nothing. You see a definition of something and you either know it or you don't. It's much less often that you'll throw out a guess and get it right. I personally like flashcards the most because they are a true factor in determining if you're retaining knowledge or not. Okay, now let me give you the strategy to best use the flashcards. So you might get this CRCST flashcard set of 200 flashcards, right? Maybe you've been in sterile processing for a year. Maybe you went through a sterile processing school. You have some knowledge, right? So that first time you go through that deck of cards, if you come across cards that are just ingrained, you know it, no problem. That's a question you would get any day of the week. You should probably remove that card because now it's just kind of a waste of your time. You want to kind of narrow down your focus to the things you absolutely need to study. I like to take like a Ziploc bag, and as I come across those cards, I'll take them out and I'll put them in the Ziploc bag to make sure I'm not wasting my time on those later. But also, the more and more cards you have that you totally know and don't need to restudy, the more you put those aside, the less of a deck of cards you're going to be carrying with you to study on the fly. So it's pretty convenient. Now, depending on your knowledge and experience, you might take this 200 card deck and you might remove 20, 40, 60 cards out of it right off the bat. If you're able to do that, that's freaking great. There's less you need to focus on. If you can't, that is all right too, because I have faith that you can get through this and you can study and you can retain this knowledge for your test. Now, as you go through this deck of cards, you're going to start retaining some knowledge the more and more you do it. And eventually you're going to get to a point where even though you just learned a new concept, it's become so familiar, you can't forget it now. And if you start coming across those cards, I would also remove those into a separate Ziploc bag. And the reason I say separate is because you have the original ones that you already knew that you'll never forget. These newer ones, though you remembered it, they're not fully solid in your memory, so you want to keep them close by. And I'll talk to you about that a little bit later. Now, when you are getting close to your exam, like within a week, a few days of taking your exam, what I like to do is take that last bit of remaining cards that you're still studying because you haven't quite retained them yet. I like to take that second Ziploc bag of cards that I've been taking out and put them back. And I'm going to tell you why. One, as we talked about earlier, these are more recently learned, so they haven't quite anchored in your memory yet. So you might come across some of these that you've already forgotten. But two, when you're within those last few days of taking your test, if you're just studying stuff you don't know, it's gonna be not great for your mind, just feeling this tension of not getting answers right. So adding those other cards back in is going to boost that morale to be like, boom, oh, I remembered that. That's great. Yes, I know that answer. I think I know this one. It's gonna help kind of give you that psychological boost that I can answer questions, I can retain knowledge, and I still have time to learn these last few items. Now, ultimately, the best and most powerful studying is by combining these practice tests with the flashcards with the HSPA manual. If you combine all three of these strategies and you dedicate time to them, there's no way you'll fail this exam. I like to go with the HSPA manual, read through it at least once. I like to take the practice exams, get a good idea where I'm at, and then while I'm taking time to do flashcards on the fly, I'm also going back and rereading those chapters I didn't do great at. And then maybe a week later, week and a half later, I come back, I take those practice exams, and then I go back and read those chapters while I'm still cycling through the flashcards. This strategy lets you go back and forth. So you have the easier way of doing multiple choice questions, and then you have the harder way of having to know the answer with a flashcard. And these two modes of learning, along with going back and reading, is going to help cement all that knowledge into your mind. These strategies have helped me pass every certification exam I've ever taken. And as I think about it, I have never missed an exam on the first time go. My CRCST, which I had to take multiple times because I let it lapse, my CIS, my CHL, my CIC for infection prevention, my CST for surgical technology. I used this strategy for all those exams, and I passed all of them first time go. And I am not the smartest guy in the room. So if I can do it, you absolutely can do it. But remember, if you don't take the time to use the flashcards, or if you take the practice exams and don't bother going back and studying what you missed, don't come and blame me for your failure. It's gonna take your work to make sure you pass this exam. If you don't put in the work, you don't earn the rewards. I hope this video helped to set you up for a winning strategy to pass your next certification exam. If you're in need, if you're studying for one of these exams, go to the website, thesterileguy.com. If you're a new member, hit that newsletter, get that discount off your first order. I will ship that stuff out right away to make sure you are prepped and ready for your exam. And I want to wish you all the best of luck. You're gonna do great. Any topics or videos you want to see, please put them in the comments down below. I love you guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.